Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. We'll get started with this first session. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to introduce, as a moderator, I'm going to introduce the 5 people that will be with me this afternoon. And we'll get started by Jose Ila. No, let's get started by Javier Hurtado. He's the Counselor of Tourism, Business and Consumption. He knows this topic very well because he was the former Transports MP. And it's been a great pleasure to work with him. Secondly, we would have Aitor Arzuaga, who is the CEO of Ibil. That's the top cutting-edge company in electric vehicles recharge in Spain. We will have Antonio Alvarez from ALSA, because I think that, well, everything has been already said. It's a very well-known company, both on national and international level. And we have Íñigo Azcona, who belongs to Irizar, speaking about quality buses. And Irizar, well, that's a company that is based here in Gipuzkoa. And these are the 4 speakers that we will have. So the main link of this roundtable was how important electrical mobility is in urban mobility in cities. I think that this is already old-fashioned. I mean, there's an important role that is being accomplished. And I think that right now we need to progress in how this is being translated and what are the new things. This morning, a speaker said that 2 years ago, the first edition of the SUM Congress, we had some ideas, some intentions, and in this Congress we can see very clearly how these ideas are being landed with deadlines, with information, with action. So for this to work, the moderator shouldn't speak a lot. We should give the floor to the speakers, and without further ado, I think that first of all we will have Javier Hurtado. Good afternoon. Thank you, Milan Kalang. Before anything, I would like to say hello to the speakers. They are experts in the electric mobility field. As Councillor of Tourism, I will focus myself on sustainable tourism, specifically that main part in touristic sustainability, that is mobility. Nowadays, we speak a lot about sustainable tourism, and in fact, it seems that it is mandatory to include that surname, and this is what it has to be. Sustainability has to be the axis for the touristic policies if we want tourism to be an element of change. So the International Tourism Organization says that we need 3 things to have sustainable tourism. First of all, to optimize the environmental resources. Without ecosystems, we don't have tourism. So this is important not only to take care of the natural environment, but also to improve these resources. Secondly, we have to preserve the local culture. An important thing to understand a place and its people, the traditional values of the community, its culture and its architecture. And the tourist is looking for that experience as a differentiating element. And thirdly, the distribution of wealth. It's about guaranteeing economic activities that can live over time and that have a benefit on the social economic level, generating stable work. Because when we speak about sustainable tourism, at least some of us are speaking about a tourism, the benefits of which have a positive impact on the community. And we speak about a tourism that develops its activity with a minimum impact on environment and local culture. So touristic sustainability needs to have 3 aspects: environmental, social and cultural, and economic. So if we focus on the environmental field, we need to be aware of how impactful touristic movements have because of transport. According to the WTO report, in 2030 of tourism because of transport will increase by 25%. the international tourism emissions will grow by 45% between 2016 and 2030, and the internal tourism emissions will increase by 21%. So just to make the long story short, the CO2 emissions of tourism mean 22% of total transport emissions. This is not only a problem for transport related to tourism, of course. This is a collective challenge that affects every sector. And we need to know that we are not facing a challenge of the future. We are facing a present challenge. The first necessary transformation is the change towards more efficient technologies related to emissions, taking into account electrification of vehicles and public transport. Spain has assumed this task as a priority. This is why the electric vehicle and connected vehicle is the protagonist of the first recovery program, with a special approach on urban mobility. Second point, we would have more sustainable transports with a higher weight of pedestrians, bikes and public transport compared to private vehicle. Out of the urban sector, the high-speed train will have to assume a great part of the trips, of the highway trips and plane trips, because it reduces emissions to 1/5. This can be applied to a touristic model where we can be more efficient using the means of transport and communicating mobility and sustainable transport to make out of them a well-considered touristic attractive. We need to make the sector aware of it so that they can perceive sustainable mobility as a great business opportunity and as a great element to attract tourists for a specific group of people that are aware of all these things. And these people are increasing because mobility for visitors is not only one way to go from one place to another, but it also entails enjoying that route where that means of transport can become into a protagonist. And if the visitor is looking for a way of transport where sustainability plays an important role, we need to make this transport into a means of attraction. This is why, from the touristic point of view, we need to develop new packages or touristic products, the foundations of which are fostering mobility and sustainable transport. And looking towards these goals and touristic sustainability, we have the I+ route project that is based on routes in the Basque Country with electric vehicle. The bus route is focused on that environmental side, but without setting aside the economic side, since the touristic flows all around our territory have a great impact on our local communities, especially the ones that receive the least tourists. From the Department of Tourists, we are trying to diversify the touristic offer. We're trying to change the flows in the territory to expand the stay and the decentralization. Some of the products that reinforce the sustainability strategy are, for example, the industrial tourism that contributes to foster places that are usually not very touristic. And these projects, like for example cyclotourism, are being fostered, and they allow us to go hiking or recovering green routes or recovering ways, respecting our surroundings. We're trying to support sustainable tourism, but the one that we're going to tackle today is the one that we've developed and that we've taken one leap forward during last year. It is e-bus route, the touring project based on an electric vehicle. It is enrooted with the sustainability strategy as one of the main pillars of the tourism strategy in the Basque Country. We have more than 300 companies that have joined this project. It's based on sustainable growth, and it promotes understanding and respect with tourists, equality, inclusion, diversity, sustainability, and preservation of the cultural heritage and environmental heritage. The e-bus route emerged based on 8 routes in Euskadi, in the Basque Country. And in the Basque Country, we have something that we can't set aside, and this is how important the car is as a means of transport. According to the last report by Biltour about tourist behavior, 67% arrive here in their own vehicle, a percentage that reaches 81% in the case of national tourists. The e-bus route tries to promote these routes with electric vehicle and fostering the implementation of new points of recharge through agreements with municipalities and the sector. Essentially, the e-bus route is a touristic project related to sustainable mobility that wants to be the first clean touristic route in Spain. To make the long story short, it's the first touristic route on a national highway prepared for electric vehicles. A network of points of charge is available in more than 950 kilometers. To articulate all our touristic resources through a specific route in an electric car favors a reduction of CO2 emissions. It helps us decentralize the most visited points, to unseason the visits, to expand the average stay, and to promote local development and sustainability in all its aspects. The e-bus route is just a model example that has started to work this summer, but we are aware that there's a lot to be done. Electric mobility is not the only way to avoid CO2 emissions. It's another way of the many actions that we have to implement in many aspects, in touristic aspect too. And it has to be the modal transfer has to be key towards less pollutant means of transport. We will work with the sector in touristic mobility strategies, because in order to reinforce the tourism sustainability, we need to integrate in the sector the mobility. We need to participate, and we must be sensitive towards the environmental problem to minimize the seasonal effects of tourism, to focus it as a resource that has to be kept on the long term, and to set consistent deadlines in touristic spaces, not to make it an unbalancing factor of the receiving area. And I would like to quote the conclusions of the WTO about climate change. Tourism needs to determine its own high ambition scenario beyond transport, looking for a scenario where tourism is transformed in order to become into a low emission activity and highly efficient activity. Just being aware that the challenges here as part of our present, we will be able to set the alliance that fosters the touristic sector, as well as other sectors at the level of sustainability that we all want. Escarre Casco, thank you very much.
De Aitor Arzuaga por parte de IBIL.
Now we'll have Aitor Arzuaga from IBIL.
Vale, pues me avisas con...
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Miguel Ángel. Thanks to the organizations, thanks to the City Council of Bilbao and Petronor for inviting me to be here. And good afternoon to all the speakers. Whoa. Let's see if it works. Let's see if we can see the slides.
Somos una empresa.
We are a company that designs, builds and operates and keep points of recharge and recharging networks for our customers.
A ver si así funciona. Pero hoy no voy a hablar de nada de eso.
But today I'm not going to speak about anything. But I'm not going to speak about any of these things. Something that happens sometimes.
La tecnología nos lo permite. Ya estamos. Perfecto. ¿O no? Sin embargo, una cosa que nos ocurre.
Something that happens is that we've been almost 11 years working in this field. And thanks to the fact that we have gone through a long journey and we have done quite a lot of things, we have made many mistakes, but we have learned a lot. So what I would like to convey and to put in common are the conclusions of our experience applied to what we think that are going to be in trends of electric mobility and the needs that will come from it according to the recharge of electric vehicles. The electric vehicles market is growing constantly. I think that out of all the information that I'm going to provide, the oldest piece of information is 4 months old, so they are relatively fresh. Of course, all of them are post-pandemic. As we can see here, the registration of low emissions, well, they are considered as hybrid connectable vehicles and vehicles with a fuel cell. For the first time, there were more registrations than diesel vehicles. This has happened in Europe sustainably, in a sustained way during the last years, and the pandemic has only speeded it up, taking into account that we are in a post-pandemic environment, in a situation of crisis of the supply chains, and this is affecting the supply and the usual development of the market. Just to go to a closer scenario, Spain and Portugal, these are close markets that are quite, that are really small and marginal in the field of electrical mobility, but on the other hand, these are markets that we can assess closely. And we see that registrations in the first half of 2020 moved to from 3.2 to 6.2%, and in September it was 14%. So this is growing significantly. Many people ask, what's the difference between Spain and Portugal? Well, in Portugal, the taxation of fossil fuels is different. In Spain, diesel is has some kind of exemption, and this is not very usual in Europe. And the growth forecasts are speeding up. These are two snapshots coming from the same report. It's one of the role models in the sector. This is the EB Outlook. In May 2020, this report said that in 2023 in Europe we would have more or less 9% of electrical registrations. 1 year after post-pandemic, in 2023 would be in around 20% of forecast. But as we've seen on the previous slide, we are close to that figure. This information is a little bit obsolete. So if we move to a longer term in around 2030, so this would be the new forecast, in 2030 Europe would become into the market where the EV adoption would be faster in the world. And we would be around 80% in 2040%. So the European market will grow more and will be saturated and will be higher than China. I'd like to make a reflection afterwards. But in this post-pandemic scenario, the forecast is that the electric mobility adoption speeds up notably. On the other hand, the OEMs are speeding up their electrification plans and the adoption of new models and electrified connections. So this is for you to see this as a summary. So now Toyota is the main outsider, or the one that is playing a different strategy in this field, but all the others, especially for vehicles and ranges that are going towards the European market, the total electrification strategy is very clear. What happens when we're going to buy an electric vehicle, both as a company, fleet, private person? The first thing that happens is that there are no electric vehicles. If you have a look at the delivery times, it's a shame because this resolution is not very good. If we have a look at this, out of all the electric vehicles that there are on sale, with information from September, the delivery date of a vehicle is this one that you can see here. In green, we can see the ones that have 3 or less, and there are many models that have more than 6 months, or some of them more than 1 year. And the electric vehicles manufacturers, or the vehicle manufacturers, because of the semiconductors crisis and the construction limitation that they have, they are giving more importance to the higher margin vehicles and electric vehicles in their production, because it's very good to fulfill the emissions regulations that came into force last year, and they are going to be applied this year in the EU. So if we go back to the first slide where we saw that growing curve, we can see that if we're going to buy a car and we have a long deadline, it means that they are losing the whole production. We are seeing the production capacity and production ramp up of the OEMs. This is what we are seeing. Another very common topic is, when will the electric vehicles be as expensive as the fossil fuel vehicles? So the acquisition cost, and we're not speaking about total cost of ownership that includes the concepts. We are just speaking about the cost of paying when you buy the vehicle. So it's converging in quite a fast way. Here you can see forecasts of May of this year regarding the evolution of the electric vehicles that is being reduced because of the cost of batteries and other elements that are included in the powertrain of the vehicle. And on the other hand, in the combustion vehicles, the cost is constant or a little bit higher, because the high cost that the emission reduction systems have, and the vehicles needs to include these systems in order to fulfill the emissions regulation. And for C and B segments that are the most popular, a B segment would be, for example, Renault Clio, and C would be Renault Megane. These cars are bought by people, and we see that the cutting point is around 2026. But it's not only 2026. In 2024, the gap would be very, very small. So let's put this into the cocktail glass and we'll draw some conclusions afterwards. These are the dates when we are going to reach that cost balance in terms of acquisition. But once we reach that crossing, the gap will be increasingly reduced. If we reach to 2030, in the popular segments, the electric vehicles will be a little bit cheaper than the combustion vehicles. And I'm asking a question: if in 2030 the electric vehicles will be a little bit cheaper than combustion vehicles, and the combustion vehicles will have restrictions in terms of circulation according to new legislation that are being promoted that are trying to limit the emissions at the metropolitan and urban areas, do we really think, in my case I don't, do we really think that that Bloomberg's forecast of May this year that said that 50% of registrations would be electric vehicles in 2030, do you think that it's going to be fulfilled? Probably not. I think that they will go too short, and in May we will see another figure above this one. If we see how these vehicles, these electric vehicles are, we will have a look at the two most important characteristics. This is the size of the battery, that is including the range. Is that how many kilometers can I drive with an electric vehicle, and how fast I can recharge my battery. So how long is my recharging stop? We have performed an analysis done by my IT technology colleagues in IBIL, and we have the vehicles that exist in the market, the ones that are available right now, that would be the ones in color mustard, and the ones that will be launched that are in red. We can see the battery of the vehicles in kilowatts an hour, and here we have the maximum recharging capacity. If we have a look at it, the mustard color vehicles are in this area. The red vehicles are here. There's a limit, and a bottom limit regarding the size of the battery, and there's a bottom limit of around 75 kilowatts an hour for the maximum recharging capacity that these vehicles allow. So this means that these vehicles, generally speaking, will allow much longer ranges and much shorter recharging times. More conclusions. We see here how, for the vehicles that we have in the market during last years, maximum recharging power was around 50 kilowatts. This has been absolutely exceeded And this is going to, I mean, this value has been exceeded absolutely. So if we try to see how these vehicles and these fleets are, so if we see this in further detail, we can see that for discontinued vehicles, the available and the the ones that have to be launched, we can see that these are the ones that have been sold, or the ones that are being sold right now. Their maximum recharging capacities. Well, we are taking the two central quartiles of all the vehicles on sale, and we can see that they are among these recharging range that has a median around 100, and the useful battery range would be around 60 kilowatts, more or less, as you can see here. But if we have a look at the electric vehicles that will come, there's a significant difference. We can see that the charging power is substantially higher and the battery size is substantially bigger. So the fleet of vehicles that we'll have will be substantially better, more able both in battery and recharge than the fleet of existing vehicles. And we will add one last factor to this equation, and this is the size of the fleet. Both if we go at a global level or at European level, we have 3 million of electric vehicles in Europe. This is a very interesting graph because it compares the pre-pandemic market forecast and the post-pandemic forecast. If we move to 2025, this is, as you could say, day after tomorrow. If I get a renting car for 4 years, it will be due after 2025. It's forecasted that in Europe there will be around 13 million of electric vehicles. That's a very simple account. 30 million minus 3, 10 million. 10 million out of these 13 million in 2025, 75% have not been sold yet. Have not been sold yet. What does this mean? That the current vehicles in 2025 will be 25% of the fleet. It will be, I wouldn't say anecdotal, but they will say absolutely minority, I would say. And this is the last factor that I would like to include to draw the conclusions. The adoption of electric mobility is speeding up and a lot. And we're not seeing it because we are seeing the ramp-up curve of OEM's production. We're not seeing that growth curve of the market because otherwise we would have stock. So they are putting us into the OEMs. I mean, we have a higher demand in Europe, and we have a minority market here in Spain and Europe. The electric mobility that we know today is going to be totally different compared to what we know right now. The traditional vehicles are not the ones that we have. They will be substantially different with much higher recharging capacity and smaller batteries, but the users won't be the same either, because now the users that we have are early adopters, are techies, are a little bit geeks, technology geeks, I would say, or people that like these things very much, and they have taken this step of buying a vehicle when its level of maturity is not optimal. In 2025, we'll have early maturity. People that making rational decision because of the minimum difference in terms of cost between combustion vehicle and the inherent advantages that entails the fact of accessing different urban areas with similar characteristics. So we will prefer to have an electric vehicle. So the profile, the user's profile will be different. And on the other hand, the characteristics of the recharge and their recharge capacities that these vehicles will require, well, 75% out of which have not been sold yet, they will be very important. So where does this take us to? If users are going to be different and they are going to be normal now that nobody's listening to us, and vehicles will be much more capable and equivalent to the combustion vehicles in terms of capacities, we'll see motor views that are more similar to the ones that we are used to with the combustion vehicles. We will say that the recharge length both at home or at work won't be key. We'll see recharge of opportunity. We'll see an usual recharge at commercial malls where the vehicle could be parked for some hours during the week. These are things that will happen. And last but not least, because of the capacities that new vehicles will have, every time we go on a long trip, we won't need a service that is a third or the fourth part of the capacity power that my car has. Because if my car can be charged at 200 kilowatts, it's highly possible that when I travel to Madrid with my car, I choose a place where I can recharge at those 150 or 200 kilowatts, because the stop time will be 1/3. So these 200 kilowatts that are the vast majority of the existing recharging network, I mean, they will have quite a quick obsolescence period, and this is the topic. If you have any remarks about what we're doing in the bill, we can speak whenever you want. Thank you very much. So now would be Antonio Alvarez's floor from ALSA.
Recordaros si queréis que me comentan que Antonio, si te quieres.
Antonio, if you want to remove your mask, if you want to take off your mask, it would be great. Thank you very much, Jose Miguel. Thanks to all the participants and the organizers for inviting us to participate in an active way in this Congress. And thanks to the ones that are attending the Congress both physically and remotely. Well, first of all, I'm going to speak what's our new technologies evolution that we've had during last years in ALSA. We've been working on new technologies for many years. We started in 2007 with the first electric buses. They were microbuses that were the first ones in Spain, together with Madrid and Seville. After that, in León, we launched some bioethanol, biodiesel projects. We had some tests with biodiesel 100%. In 2010, we included some hybrid vehicles, both series and parallel. After 2012, we started to include compressed natural gas in Guadalajara. In 2013, it was an important milestone for the diesel because the Euro 6 regulation came into force. After 2016, we started to include hybrid vehicles and CNG vehicles in the metropolitan areas. Up to now, all the technologies were focused on the urban vehicles, but now the metropolitan vehicles were including them too. And in 2017, we launched our first electric buses projects, and in this case, vehicles of a standard size, 12 meters, that I'll deal with in a minute. And in 2019, we launched a new project with a liquefied natural gas bus. These were the first LNG buses in Europe. We think that it could be a good alternative in gas for the mid and long distance, because CNG doesn't have that autonomy. And in 2020, we launched our first autonomous electric vehicle. And in 2021, we are starting to launch the first hydrogen vehicles. There are some of these vehicles at the exhibition outside. So this is the evolution that we've had during the last years regarding new technologies.
Bueno, en cuanto a los buses eléctricos, la flota que tenemos actualmente de...
So, according to...
Bueno, ver si no piso ahí, no me doy cuenta. Gracias. La flota eléctrica que tenemos actualmente...
So the electric fleet that we have in Alsa is 25 buses. Many of them are here in Bilbao. We have electric buses that are operating in Oviedo, in Almeria, in Madrid, and in Marrakesh, in Morocco. So just for you to have an idea, we have more than 300 buses, hybrid buses, and gas buses between CNG, LNG, and petrol, natural gas. We have these buses working throughout Spain. The brands that we have now in the sector, well, maybe we don't have them all here. The more representative ones in terms of electric buses are Solaris Elisa, Mercedes, and Caetano. We have buses from all of them and other European manufacturers, VDL, Scania, and Volvo, and we have Asian manufacturers BYD, King Long, and Yutong. Our experiences with the first 4 ones, but we will keep on trying with other brands in the following months. I'd like to speak a little bit about the project that we did last month regarding the autonomous microbus. We included a very small bus, a 12 seats bus, and we launched it in Canto Blanco in Madrid. That's a university campus. It doesn't need a driver, it's an autonomous vehicle, but it needs an operator in the vehicle to act in case there's any problem, any inconvenience. Because if there's an obstacle, the vehicle would stop and the operator could drive the vehicle so that it continues its journey. So it's an interesting project that, I mean, we were a little bit concerned about security because of not having a driver, but the truth is that it's working very well and we haven't had any issues, and it's absolutely trustworthy and reliable. And this year we are launching hydrogen vehicles. I won't elaborate on this because there are other lectures related to hydrogen. I'm focusing on electric mobility projects. An electric mobility project is very different to a diesel mobility project. Of course, we have some challenges that we have to overcome because it's quite complex. It's not that simple. So, first of all, from the infrastructure point of view, the charging infrastructure, the charging points, batteries of vehicles, the autonomy that the vehicle has, conditioning, etc., and economic factors like energy consumption, the vehicle's availability, and the the cost of acquisition, both of the battery and the vehicle. It's important to take into account the electrical charging infrastructure. Before starting an electrical mobility project, we need to think of the mid and long term. You need to know what's the development project. You need, I mean, for example, you can't think of buying a bus, an electric bus a day, and buying other 2 in 2 years, because you have to determine the energy that you need, the energy supply, how you're going to accomplish. And up to a while ago, you could only have that energy supply through the electric companies. Now there are other options that are about having this electric supply through a railway facility or an industry. For example, you can charge your buses while they have a lower demand. For example, the underground. The underground stops during the night and you can take advantage of that energy to charge your buses. So it's not only the typical model of depending on the distributor of the supplier, so to speak. You can use other industries, and once you launch these projects, you need to take into account the infrastructure planning. It's not an easy topic, and it takes a lot of time. You need to calculate that the fact of having or accomplishing this, well, maybe you will need between 6 and 9 months to have this this structure available. Another important topic would be the charge. You need to define what type of charge you want for your vehicles, and the charge inside with a limited autonomy, or you have the possibility of buying vehicles with a lower capacity, and you charge the vehicle after at the beginning of the line, at the head of the line. In our cases, we all charge our vehicles during the night at the garage. It's very important to have a smart charging system, a smart charging, and it optimizes the how the other vehicles are charged. It would be better to avoid to have problems during the night, or at least it could warn you that you have a problem, and maybe you don't end up your service because maybe they are not on time. You can optimize the cost of the energy, taking advantage of hours with a lower rate. So it's important to have a smart charging system. The battery of buses, well, we have different models. We have lithium, NMC, solid state. Every manufacturer has one type of battery that is different. Many of them are the same, but well, I don't know which ones are better. So new technologies will increase the capacity in the years to come. We will have batteries with a higher capacity, and the price will be reduced. What this graph tells us, how some factors have an influence on the consumption. We can see that the conditioning system has an impact of 0.8, but there are other things that have an impact on the consumption. So the capacity, the quality of the road, speed, etc., topography, orography, slopes, and what affects the most would be the environment, the air conditioning and heating. In a diesel vehicle, it has the same influence, but in this case, we don't have this capacity problems. It's important to consider climatology. Many countries in Europe are trying to use diesel heating system in order to avoid to deplete the battery during the winter. And other factors that should be taken into account is, for example, availability of an electric vehicle. We need to take this into account. There are aspects that have an influence on that capacity, that it has many electric components that require specific programming, and we usually don't have them at stock, and that delays the delivery. Solving the breakdowns is more difficult because they need skilled stuff that is not always available. So of course the capacity is always smaller than in diesel vehicles, and we need to determine where an electric vehicle can't be working, and especially in what time of the year. It depends on the environment, of course. Now we are speaking about replacement ratios of 1.2 electric vehicles versus one diesel vehicle. We need to take that into account too. The price of the bus, I mean, an electric vehicle is much more expensive than a diesel vehicle. The batteries, for example, could last 7, 8, 9, 10 years, but the cost is important. It will go down as time goes by, but now it is a significant cost, and we need to take into account that during the life cycle of the vehicle, we will have to change those batteries. It won't last forever. So the energy is, diesel is more expensive right now. Maintenance is a little bit more expensive. It needs more specialists in electric systems. The components are more expensive than in diesel vehicles, and an important part are the current contractual models. That is, right now the contracts that we have with the administrations are made for diesel vehicles or for hybrid vehicles or gas vehicles. If we included electric vehicles right now, makes us rethink the current contracts to see how these electric vehicles can fit into the contracts that we currently have in force, because costs would be higher than the ones from the diesel vehicles. Sorry, I forgot the cost of energy. It's important. The cost of energy is cheaper in diesel than in the electric vehicle, but in the last years or something, because of this increase in the price of light, from a gap of more than 60% in favor of the electric one, now it's less than 50. So if electricity still goes up, this gap will be increasingly reduced. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Bueno, pasaríamos ahora entonces al...
So now we'll move to the next speaker. That will be Íñigo Azcona from Irizar Mobility.
Buenas tardes a todos. Arratsaldeon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the invitation, both to the administration and the other sponsors. And today, I would like to share some details about Irizar Mobility, a company from Irizar Group that bases its business in electromobility, and I would like to share with you how we have transformed our business model to be able to catch up. Basically, we have been working since 1889, and it's true that thanks to this new paradigm, we have been able to get into electromobility, but we are related to other four sectors like electronics, energy management, electric engines, and connectivity. And in this moment, we are a company that has more than 3,000 workers. So to focus all our know-how in the Basque Country, well, we have 7 big brands that are part of Irizar. As you can see on the screen, we have different centers in the world, And well, focusing on what Edithana Mobility is, it would be the young company, so to speak, the startup of Edithana Group. It basically focuses on giving turnkey solutions in mobility. The vehicles that you can see on the top left corner are electric vehicles, and a first application that we have had is to collect all the garbage. It's true that the cell is developed by us, but everything that is behind the batteries is thanks to a technical team that we have that is trying to create new solutions and to adapt to the customer needs. And equally important is the charging infrastructure. Antonio Camaño has been speaking about the different solutions we have. And a very important point that is necessary in this case for the operators is the management of fleets, big data, etc., that we can find behind these electric vehicles, that it's really worth to study. And last but not least, a very important leg would be the post-sale service, the process that we develop with our customers, the accompanying process, not only the beginning but also generating the process, the accompanying process, the counseling process with the customer during the development stage, and of course the post-sale stage, and everything with the seal of the Edithana Group. Many people could be wondering, and why Edithana has been able to reach this point. So in 2008, after a very important crisis, we decided to take a leap in the internal business, and we decided to move to a diversification of what historically had been the passengers transport. And basically we started with a blank sheet, and we started to develop the electric project. It's true that we were starting to listen that the passengers transport in the future will be zero emissions, so we started to work on it, and in 2013 we created the first electrical bus. In 2013, thanks to CEU's funds, we had our first electric vehicles in Barcelona, and since then we had a very important current of fleet electrification at European level, and we created the first electromobility plan in 2016, and we generated many projects and new versions of vehicles that we'll see in a minute. This is the first electromobility plant in Europe, and we are telling a story from the beginning to the end. Nutrition, in this case, of this factory is through green energy. So the productive process is zero emissions, it's a seamless project, and we deliver 100% electric vehicles, zero emissions vehicles. So not only that, but also the production process needs to make sense. And this is why we are going beyond the business model, and we are trying to rethink every single part of our production process. These are different vehicles that we have. We have the traditional one, the Edithana IE bus, with the Edithana IE tram, the one that we had at the exhibition out of the Euskalduna Palace. And the last solution, that would be IE truck. In this case, this is a truck for urban solutions. We were saying that with the new regulations that will come from zero-emission solutions in the urban areas, well, this will be a market niche that many operators will have to tackle. Obviously, I think that the benefits are quite obvious. At sound level, I think that the zero-emissions vehicles are good. They have a very important commitment in terms of autonomy, and I'm launching a message in the sense that the battery technology in the following 5 years will evolve much more than in the last 20. There will be a dramatic change in technology, and of course with that commitment in terms of design that we've talked about. the batteries are very important in technology that the vast majority of manufacturers use. This is lithium ion. We have different modular solutions based on this ion lithium solution. This would be the natural evolution of an electric vehicle. We have the quick charging. That would be a hybrid between slow and ultra fast charging and ultra fast charging. That this is for vehicles that are operating between point A and point B, and in every regulation that they do at the head of the route, they are charged between 3 and 4 minutes. So with this we cover every need in the urban environment, with operations between 18 and 20 hours and with autonomies that are over 200 kilometers. At vehicles level, we've been awarded with several prizes, but I would really want to focus on this vehicle, the one that we had out there this morning. This is quite an eye-catching vehicle. We're trying to rethink the passengers transport in cities, and we want to have a product that talks by itself. Something that is striking and it's attractive for people that use the private vehicle, with a change in the design paradigm, with great capacity, with a futuristic line, and in this case we call it Irizar IE Tram. Regarding trucks, as we've said before, at technology level we have two possibilities. The first one would be the truck 100% electric, and the second one would be a range extender solution, or have the possibility of increasing that millage range with a gas engine. We would have a gas engine that would fuel that will fill the batteries as soon as we get out of that urban environment. With a button at the driver's side, we can choose if we want the gas engine or the electric engine. At European level, we are present in more than 10 countries. And it's true that the important part is highly concentrated here in Spain, with quite important development at national level. It's true that Barcelona and Madrid are the cities that have that are betting the most by the electric vehicle. In Madrid we have 85 12 meters vehicles, as we've seen, but with the next generation funds it's a good opportunity for every city council to bet on this new paradigm in terms of mobility. And not only the rolling solution, so to speak, but also at cargo level, the pantographic cargo in this sense. There's a project with 45 vehicles in Amiens in France, and it's a very ambitious project where we changed the fleet from combustion engine to an electric vehicle, and this is where we are heading towards. The solution that Antonio has mentioned before, on the left we can see that slow charging solution and a fast charging solution with pantograph, taking care of that, taking care of aesthetics, because we eventually know that a new element in the city is something a little bit controversial, so we are giving different solutions. In this case, this pantograph can even be a street lamp. I mean, we try to be friendly when implementing a project in the city. And of course, all these solutions, all this information that is taken from the electric vehicles, well, it's very important to be able to read them, to study them, and maybe to implement them, to implement improvements for the future. And through a company in the group, we have a platform that's called iPanel, where we collect all the information coming from the vehicle and we try them to be friendly for the user-friendly. At customized consultancy level, this would be the post-sale network that we have. This is an end-to-end service where we accompany the customer, and it's very important when implementing a project. It's a joint launching with the operator, showing the vehicle, etc. And we have a lot to train and educate in this sense because of the acknowledgement of technology. But everybody that has embarked and that is betting on electrification is really easy and comfortable coming to understand such a vehicle. And last but not least, I'd like to speak about the environmental component. Sorry, this is the one that makes us work every day. So we have sustainable production with a story that we tell from the beginning to the end, with different circular economy projects. It's not only delivering the 100% electric vehicle and zero emissions vehicle. In some way, you need to provide services to all the waste that can be generated, and that Antonio was saying, in the sense that the batteries have specific durability, so we should look for a second life for them. Circular economy projects that in some way allow us to take advantage of this technology, because it is still valid for different projects, no matter they are ice storage or any other that can be valid. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you.
Bueno, pues vamos a ir acabando con el último interviniente.
So let's listen to our last speaker. We have started by Javier Hurtado, he was the Consul of Tourism, and now we're going to finish by Jose Ila, who is the mayor of a very touristic city as Palma de Mallorca.
Espero no. Bueno, yo no correr el peligro de apagar la pantalla porque no tengo.
Well, I don't have any presentation, so the screen won't be off. So, thanks for inviting me. I'm going to speak on behalf of a city, and I'm being a little bit more provocative, and I would say that for a city as Palma, well, in Palma, we have 1 car per citizen that is legally able to drive. So it's not about making diesel or gasoline vehicles into electric vehicles. It's true that we will reduce the pollution level, but it doesn't matter. If you are having electric vehicle, you will be in a traffic jam, or to recover public space that we gave to the car. That was a lot. That was everything, by the way. And now we want to recover this for people and to live in a different way for visitors, for tourists, etc. So, starting from this point, in Palma, we are betting on sustainable mobility. An important part is electric mobility, and in the case of electric mobility, let me tell you what we're doing. We will use next generation funds that are a great opportunity to do something that is not happening in our city, and this to develop a charging points network. It's not happening, and we'll take advantage of it. And from the public sector, with private sector support, we will implement 10,000 charging points in public space, besides the one that you can have in your community or whatever. I'm going to implement something that I'm really jealous about. This is the tram. We've been able to see a tram that in the case of Palma is a transformation of the city, because it will enable us to connect every important core, the downtown, for example, with the other touristic area that we have, that is the Palma Beach, with the airport, and with the most important hospital. So that's a transformation of mobility that will allow us to make all this transformation. It's not only replacing cars by the tram, but also changing the landscape. Electric mobility are skates to this reality that's here to say that it's succeeding, because how comfortable they are, and they're a challenge in the city because they need to have room, and that's not always easy, and we're working on it. So skates are a great opportunity for us in order to change mobility and to think of a different way to move. We regulated it before the General Traffic Association did it, because we saw that they were growing and we had to do it. And for now, they are succeeding, and I think that it's going to be the case in the future, and we'll have an increasing presence of skates, Because if 7 or 8 years ago someone had told us that skates would be used as they are being used, we wouldn't have believed it. And there's more to come. And in our case, we will take a leap to the new electric and hydrogen technologies. We have taken that intermediate step of natural gas. Up to 3 years ago, 95% of our fleet was diesel. Right now it is natural gas. We have agreed to buy 5 hydrogen buses, and with the next generation funds, we have presented the purchase of electric vehicles for the for the local transportation association. The bike is important too. We are doubling our biking system, Bici Palma, and we will have new bikes that will have a new design. It will be more comfortable for the citizen. 30% of them will be electric, so we are taking that step with public bikes. And of course, we will incentivize the purchase of electric vehicles that are comfortable for the city, and they will be able to park for free in the regulated areas, and they would have a 75% in our circulation tax. But that's not enough for a city. The challenge is much bigger. Now in 2022, we will launch a low emissions area in downtown. And in our case, you won't be able to access with the electric vehicle. We want to remove the vehicle from downtown. We don't want to replace one technology by the other. It will be just for residents. We will have car parks, or you'll be able to go there by other means. This is the difference with other cities. We are betting on making pedestrian ways that allow us to give credit to our neighborhoods. We are expanding the pedestrian ways. And there's nothing worse than having a park that is a roundabout that this happens. And we are increasing our public areas, taking space from the cars. We are applying some pacifying measures. We are taking Bilbao into account for this. This is one of the measures that we are most proud of. We're very happy because we've pacified traffic and we have saved lives. The first piece of information that we had is that serious accidents had diminished in more than, we had less than half of the injured people. And we have the improvement of public transport, but it will be interconnected with the other transports that we have in the island of Mallorca that come here to bring tourists, etc. That were not looking. They were turning their back on the new technologies, and we will use these technologies with the next generation funds to have information in real time about mobility in the city. We have it for some parts, but not for the whole city. And we are betting on change, basically taking into account new technologies, and we want to change the model. Basically, we want to change the model, and it is like, well, let's move differently. Let's get public space. Let's have less polluted spaces, and let's have cities for fun, to live them and not only to cross them by car. This is the goal that we've set in Palma. As you can understand, this model change that is theoretically accepted has its reluctancies. When someone says that you're going to have a bike lane in front of your house, and if it's going to take some car park places, maybe you don't like it. Or if you're not going to get in the city because of that low emissions area, that's an annoyance. But if we stop to do things, we won't progress. So in Palma, things are very clear. We will take the leap. And Palma, the one that was 6 years ago and the one that will be in 5 years' time, will be different. I think it will be a better city, and I think every city in Spain and Europe will be better, because when you travel and you see, this is the line that everybody is following. So I think that's the future option. Friendly, green cities, and not cities from the 20th century with that typical picture full of cars. It's deep change, and we all need to be allies and to push, because it's not easy. Thank you.
Bueno, pues para ir finalizando.
Also, just to wrap up, I think that the most interesting thing would be that both people that are watching us or people that are here, if you have any questions, any doubts. So if you allow me just to wrap up and to make a remark about what every speaker has said. In the case of Javier Hurtado, sustainable tourism, I think that the e-bus route, I think it's about optimizing natural resources from the province, in this case, both Álava and Euskadi as a whole. Aitor Arzuaga by Ebil has explained some experiences and the future needs in the electric car recharging. I have noted down that distance range, and this recharging time has to be shorter, so that you can make that rational decision of buying an electric vehicle. Antonio Vázquez Álvarez has described the different models that Alsa has: hydrogen, autonomous vehicles, etc. Íñigo Azcona has talked about Irizar. It moved from being just a body shop manufacturer to manufacture zero emissions vehicles. So it was basically, they were a coach builder. It was amazing, because I asked them once and they said, no, we have a masseur here, because it's really helpful. It's like, oh, you have a masseur? Well, maybe we don't have that on the public sphere yet. And José Ila, well, the mayor from Palma de Mallorca, the 10,000 recharging points, tram, skates. Luckily, Alfonso's not here, because it's skates for Palma and bicycles for the summer. And this shift in terms of model, from diesel gasoline vehicle to other alternatives. And well, I've told you all this to prove that I've been paying attention, that after lunch I haven't taken any nap. So if anybody here has a question, you can ask them directly, and that's good. Yeah, there's a question here. Ángel Anero is the mobility manager of Vizcaya. It doesn't have much to do with what I do, but Íñigo Azcona has presented the electric garbage trucks. I don't know if they're silent or not. Traditionally, this usually happens at night, and this is really noisy. I guess that when the truck moves, it's silent, but when you pick up the garbage, is that more silent, or is it noisy, as it has always been? Yeah, well, obviously, the solution that we've tried to give has been a 360 solution, not only at movement level, but at operation level too. Obviously, the dBs are reduced, obviously not to zero, but it's true that the dBs reduce a lot, since it's just an electric solution, the one that they are trying to implement. From Irizar too, and what we have not been able to remove has been the noise of putting the bucket upside down, so to speak. But the machinery is totally electric, as well as the vehicle propelling. So I live on a first floor, and at 3:30 in the morning, the garbage truck comes along, and the engine sounds much more than the bucket. It also makes noise, of course. So, any other questions? Hello, good afternoon. You've talked about the sales forecast of electric vehicles before and after the pandemic, and well, I wanted to ask you, are we seeing this improvement before and after the pandemic? So who's going to answer this? From eBill, yeah, they're the ones that have provided us this information. Well, I think that in this case, the effect of the pandemic in the sales transformation, the pandemic affects as an acceleration. It's speeding up things, I would say. We are seeing this at work, we are seeing this in the social sphere, and in mobility. What has happened is that a change that was happening has been speeding up, basically. Okay, so any further question? Okay, yeah. Hello, good afternoon. I have two questions, sorry. We've seen ALSA and that says that there are not many stations that use a mobile station. I'd like to know who provides them with the mobile solution, because maybe the other ones will use it. And the second question is, why Ediza doesn't have hydrogen vehicles, everything's electric, and if they have any hydrogen plans? Thank you. I think that this morning Antonio Alvarez talked about that. They needed to have some kind of portable charging for hydrogen. Yeah, the solution that we have is a metal carbons generator. It's the it's the solution that we're using, a portable solution. Yeah, regarding the second question, Ediza is in a plan of is trying to develop hydrogen, and we need to be aware that technology, well, currently is not mature enough, but in the next 2 or 3 years we will see hydrogen solutions by Ediza. So there's another question. So for the mayor of Mallorca, related to hydrogen and the 4 buses that he said about Mallorca, what type of hydrogen will they have and how are they going to supply it? Hello, well, with hydrogen stations. I'm the mayor of Palma, just for the others. In the island of Mallorca, we will build a green hydrogen factory, and what they're going to do will be to supply this with the portable hydrogen station to supply these buses. Let's see if it works, and let's see what we do next. In Mallorca, we don't have air generators. We have other approaches, and we are managing the dams on the island, like it's. I think that in El Hierro Island, but the PV energy is the most important one right now. There's another question there. Good afternoon. I'd like to ask Aitor about the following. There has been a slide where there was an increase of the electric vehicle sale in some years' time, but we are reading the problems that we have when supplying energy in the world because, well, the power stations are closing, etc. So my question is, do we have enough capacity to generate energy to supply recharging systems for every electric vehicle in the world? The recharge of the electric vehicles has two advantages. First of all, regarding the final energy use, would be incredibly efficient compared to the energy use of fossil fuels. So if every vehicle was electric, it has been considered that if every vehicle was electric, there would be an increase of 10%. So we have more than 100 gigabytes of power. The daily peak is about 35 or 40, so we have capacity enough. That on the one side, and the electric vehicle charging has to be smart, and that's a great advantage, because if that's smart, as it's happening in many systems and buildings, offices, car parks, etc., it can be managed and it can be adapted so that if there was some kind of disruption or problem of the electric system, the intensity could be reduced to fit that circumstance. It's a very important difference compared to other charging systems in Spain that are not smart. And with that inflexibility, they can't be managed. On the other side, we usually charge the electric vehicles when there's an off-peak time, so there's a difference between peak and off-peak of an important value. So everything we do at night is to optimize the use of the existing system. Following the same question, I would like to have an idea about the future of sales in terms of energy and capacity, for example, in 2030. Do you think that this is going to be a possibility? Who wants to answer the question? This will depend on several factors. First of all, I understand that you say V2G from the price arbitration point of view in order to recharge energy from the network in cheap hours and to send energy in the peak hours. We can do that with the Tesla Powerwall or many other systems that we have available in Spain at pilot level. So what usually happens is that because of the cost of these systems, although there are specific packages, because of their cost, the price difference that you need for that arbitration is relatively high. We were speaking about you need different cost differences of more than 15 cents a kilowatt hour between both, so that that can have an economic justification. So will it happen? Maybe. Will it be the most efficient mechanism to do all this? In my opinion, it's not very possible. So, if people can have a PV system at home in some years, when all these systems are more optimized in terms of cost, maybe they could work, but I doubt that they were going to use the car for that. It's a personal opinion. I don't know if Inigo wanted to... Okay. There's another question here. As we speak about smart charging, I would like to ask to the mayor of Palma. I guess that the clean energy is being 100% used, so thermal energy, I mean, it doesn't seem that it's an optimization of the PV energy, or I don't understand it this way. Could you explain it, please? Thank you. Because we will install more PV systems. In Mallorca, we are an isolated system. It's not the same. we don't have wind turbines because of the visual impact that they have on an island. So what technology can we use? One of them is PV technology. So the PV presence in Mallorca is quite limited, and it will be expanded. For example, in our city, the goal is not to have sun farms, but to use what we have already built. We have many areas where we can install different plates, and it's about using what we already have built. It's about installing more PV power because the presence was quite reduced. It's not as in other areas of the peninsula where you see important solar farms. But this is what we are doing with support by the government and by Europe, because many private entities have asked for these plates. Okay, so I wanted to ask something that we've received online for Aitor Arzuaga. Anonymous says, this an audience that is sure, but what would you tell the regular customer that doesn't know what's going to come and that feels a little bit confused right now? Well, that's difficult. Well, I would say, as a citizen, what I would tell anybody that thinks about that, maybe he should think whether he needs a private vehicle or not. That's the first answer that has to be given. Do I really need a private vehicle? If the answer is yes, well, if the answer is no, that's key. Public transport or other transport mechanisms, that's the best, both for your pocket and for your city and environment. If the answer is yes, I need a private vehicle, that many people need it, and yeah, that's a fact. The question that we should ask is, what type of use or what profile do I have as a user? I would say that any user that has a place where to charge the vehicle at night, a place next to their home, and for example, something that's 200 meters away, a plot or something, everybody that fulfills that criteria is a natural candidate to use an electric vehicle, because they will have a better experience and they will spend less money. So people that occasionally or weekly or monthly go on a big travel and don't have the possibility of charging their vehicle at night, I would say that it's not the time. Thank you very much. So Anonymous, if you're watching us, this is the answer. We have another one from Miguel Angel Sanchez. He says, what problems and challenges you think that national regulation of shared use on public space entails, and what proposals or solutions do you think that we should give priority to? I don't know if anybody dares. The mayor. Well, I would say that we need to start recovering public spaces for other uses, that are not for vehicles. For public space, sometimes it's just 1.5 meters. That's a piece of pedestrian way for example, in a street that is 20 meters wide. That's not a rational use. So first question, do you need a car? If you don't, you need to have enough alternatives for you not to use it. And that space that was for your car can be devoted to something else. I think that's the dynamic that we're following. To me, the rational use of public space means recovering space for the private vehicle. But, well, anyway, I've said that it's difficult, and, well, every area is different. So I'll support the mayor. It can't be, I mean, we need environmental issues, we have health issues, And this is highly beneficial for our local commerce. I mean, we should recover that public space. That will be very positive for our commercial business, for our local businesses, sorry. That expenditure is important for us. Okay. So thank you to Miguel Ángel Sánchez, the answer. And if there are no further questions, we will close the round table. Thank you very much to all the speakers, to the audience, and everybody that has followed us both online and here. Good afternoon and thank you very much. Eskerrik asko.